This presentation of the Savage Nation is brought to you by Inheritance Funding Company.
On the air, online, and on the go. This is Talk 910 KNEW.
Warning. The Michael Savage Show contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Here is Michael Savage.
The big story today on the Savage Nation was about the cop and the professor of African American Studies, Mr. Gates, the distinguished scholar who apparently has cured polio, solved the riddles of cancer, unraveled the code of DNA, climbed Mount Everest, etc. It turns out that Gates was a witness on behalf of the controversial Florida rap group 2 Live Crew in their obscenity case. He argued that the material the government alleged was profane actually had important roots in African-American vernacular, games, and literary traditions and should be protected. See, that's the level of the professor here. Don't confuse him with some lowly professor. This guy was at the top of the heap. I mean, he's a witness for a rap group. This just shows you how high he is. He's at Mount Olympus. Gates has also been an outspoken critic of the Eurocentric literary canon. You know, Shakespeare, Moliere, stuff like that. He said that black literature must be evaluated by the aesthetic criteria of its culture of origin. Duh. Not criteria imported from Western or European cultural traditions that express a, quote, tone deafness to the black cultural voice and result in intellectual racism. Now, let's review this and see if we can deconstruct what Gates is arguing. We have to evaluate black literature by the criteria of its culture of origin. So far as I know, Africa had no written tradition until the white man colonized Africa, the last I checked. So what aesthetic criteria is he talking about? Well, I guess if you're a professor at Harvard, you make up your own rules. In his studies, he traced the lineage of notable African Americans, and using DNA testing, Gates learns of his own European ancestry, 50%, like Obama. And in the second installment, we learn he is descended from the Irish king, Niall of the 9 hostages. So he's actually a cousin of the cop. He's actually a cousin of the Irish policeman. It's a family dispute. You've got to hear some of the verbiage that's coming out of the mouth of the so-called professor, Henry Louis Gates, Jr. Listen to the names he calls the policemen.
What it made me realize was how vulnerable all black men are, how vulnerable all people of color are, and all poor people to capricious forces like a rogue policeman. And this man clearly was a rogue policeman.
Stop the tape. Did you hear that? A rogue officer? Obama calls the policeman stupid and Gates calls him a rogue officer? Have you ever heard more disrespect for the men and women who keep our communities safe from criminals? Next, he talks about the woman who called the police. You didn't know anything about the great professor's comments about her. Wait, you're not going to hear it.
I know that she must be intimidated, and she must think that I'm very angry. It wasn't her fault. It was the fault of a policeman who couldn't stand a black man standing up for his rights right in his face. And that's what I did. And I would do the same thing exactly again.
You see, it's all about race. I don't even think the good professor realizes what a racist he is himself. This is what a generation of the mental disorder of liberalism has left us with. Petty mandarins who think they can push anybody around because of the color of their skin. Here he is blasting the police again. Listen.
He couldn't come in my house legally without a warrant. He couldn't arrest me without a warrant. Had I stepped outside, he would have slapped handcuffs on me for being under suspicion of breaking and entering, because he was responding to a profile. 2 black men with backpacks were breaking and entering into my home, and when he saw me, he just presumed that one of them was me.
See, according to Gates, it seems there's nothing the police could have done right except stay at the police station and refuse to respond to a burglary call. Then, of course, he could have sued them for not responding because he's a black man. That's the way it is. Now, apparently the president wasn't satisfied with calling the Cambridge police stupid. He came out today and continued to defend what he said. Listen to the president stepping into it deeper.
You still think the Cambridge police acted stupid?
Well, you know, this is Terry, I think this is a classic example at a time when we're struggling about healthcare, energy. We've got 2 wars going on, that issues like this get elevated in ways that probably don't make much sense. I respect what police officers do. What I can tell, from what I can tell, the sergeant who was involved is an outstanding police officer. But my suspicion is probably that it would have been better if cooler heads prevailed.
Now, that's an interesting one because you can hear that he's starting to backpedal. Notice how Obama stumbles when the reporter asks him the question, but at the end he still says that cooler heads should have prevailed. In other words, in the words of George Orwell in Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And then in a press conference later in the day, he said this.
Because this has been ratcheting up, and I obviously helped to contribute ratcheting it up, I want to make clear that in my choice of words, I think I unfortunately gave an impression that I was maligning the Cambridge Police Department or Sergeant Crowley specifically. And I could have calibrated those words differently. And I told this to Sergeant Crowley.
But he was maligning the police department. He said the whole Cambridge Police Department acted stupidly. Listen to the great president again.
I don't know, not having been there and not seeing all the facts, what role race played in that. But I think it's fair to say, number one, any of us would be pretty angry. Number two, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly in arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home. And number three, what I think we know separate and apart from this incident is that there is a long history in this country of African Americans and Latinos being stopped by law enforcement disproportionately. And that's just a fact.
It's right there for the record. That's what he said. And then in his worst misstep of all, he tries to make a joke out of it. Sorry, Obama, it ain't funny.
He also did say he wanted to find out if there was a way of getting the press off his lawn. I informed him that I can't get the press off my lawn. He pointed out that my lawn is bigger than his lawn. But if anybody has any connections to the Boston press as well as national press, Sergeant Crowley would be happy for you to stop trampling his grass. All right?
Trying to make vile racism into a joke. Shame on you, Obama. You're trying to backpedal at the same time you're trying to continue slamming the police. Well, it doesn't fool me, and it doesn't fool 80% of the American people, including most black people. They know what went on here. They've seen this type before. They know the Gateses of the world. They've been around them. I really wish to God Bush would come back. Bush's dyslexia, by comparison, is more literate than this man's false literacy in the sense that what Obama says, although it's spoken well, is more gibberish than Bush's mangled sentences. Does that say it? Does that say it clearly enough? Bush mangled the English language like no one in history in the presidency, right? But compared to what Obama says and what he talks about and how he says nothing, when the teleprompter's not running, I'll take Bush.
The United States is looking forward to eating Indian mangoes.
The man who killed the American avocado industry. I don't even like avocado anymore. I lived on them for years. I ate avocado, tomato every morning on a bagel for year in and year out.
Then years later, I read that, and I didn't know this. I intuitively knew it. Must be an Aztec gene or something, little Incan blood. I lived on avocado smeared on a bagel with tomato. I knew about lycopene 15 years ago. I wrote about it. But you combine the tomato with the avocado and you magnify the health benefits of either fruit.